Disclaimer. What you're about to hear may cause mild unrest, sudden insight, or the irresistible urge to question everything you were told today. Welcome to Human Drift, a channel for night thinkers, restless minds, and anyone who likes their stories strange, psychological, and slightly sideways. How are you this evening? Worn down, wide awake, still carrying the day like a stubborn shadow? This space is built for people exactly like you. Here, we drift together through tales that slip under the surface while your body sinks towards sleep. Tonight's piece is an intriguing little essay called The Death of Critical Thinking. Settle back. Let the edges blur. The night is listening. We live in an age of infinite information and vanishing thought. This is the paradox of our moment. We have access to more knowledge than any generation in human history, yet we seem less capable of thinking clearly about any of it. We scroll, we share, we react. But we rarely stop to question what we're consuming or why we believe what we believe. Something has shifted. The habits of mind that once supported reasoned discourse are eroding, replaced by a digital architecture designed to confirm rather than challenge, to inflame rather than inform. Critical thinking is being slowly suffocated by technological manipulation, tribal polarization, and our inability to sit with discomfort, to understand what we've lost. We need to look at both where we came from and where we're heading. The algorithm knows what you want. Critical thinking requires friction. It needs contradiction, discomfort, the willingness to be wrong. Digital platforms are engineered for the opposite: smooth, frictionless reinforcement of whatever you already think. The architecture is simple. Social media algorithms optimize for engagement, and engagement spikes when content triggers emotion, particularly outrage or validation. A 2018 MIT study tracked 126,000 news stories shared on Twitter and found that false information spread 6 times faster than truth, not because of bots, but because humans prefer novelty over accuracy. We share what surprises us, what makes us feel like insiders, what confirms our suspicions about the world. Internet activist Eli Pariser called this filter bubbles, personalized information ecosystems that show us more of what we already believe and hide everything that might challenge us. If you're conservative, the algorithm serves you conservative everything. If you're progressive, you get the mirror image. Either way, you end up in a silo where opposing views aren't just disagreed with, they're invisible, or portrayed as dangerous. When you're surrounded by constant agreement, your mind goes soft. The muscles required for weighing evidence, evaluating arguments, tolerating ambiguity, atrophy from disuse. What develops instead is ideological tunnel vision, and the certainty that anyone who disagrees must be either stupid or malicious. The extremes swallow the middle. When people live in self-reinforcing bubbles, their beliefs intensify. Nuance disappears. Complexity becomes intolerable. And what you're left with is radicalization in every direction. Look at right-wing populism. Movements like MAGA thrive on emotionally charged binaries, patriots versus traitors, real people versus corrupt elites, truth-tellers versus liars. These narratives spread like wildfire on social media because they're simple, emotionally satisfying, and provide clear enemies. The algorithm amplifies anger. The anger confirms the narrative, and the cycle accelerates. But the dynamic isn't unique to one side. In progressive spaces, particularly online, a different form of the same pattern emerges. What critics call cancel culture or purity spirals, the insistence on ideological conformity, the treatment of nuanced disagreement as betrayal, where questioning becomes equated with complicity, and every imperfection becomes grounds for exile. Academics have been disinvited from speaking engagements for suggesting class matters alongside race. Long-time activists pushed out of movements they helped build for failing to use evolving terminology correctly. Writers, journalists, professors, seeing careers damaged, not for holding conservative views, but for insufficient progressive orthodoxy. The impulse to question is replaced by the impulse to condemn. People stop thinking and start performing, demonstrating allegiance through increasingly rigid positions, through public displays of righteousness, through searching out heretics within their own ranks. The content differs dramatically between left and right. The values being defended are often opposite, but the mechanism is identical: narrowing of perspective, elevation of emotional certainty over intellectual humility, the collapse of thought into tribal reflex. Both poles feed on the same fuel: rage, righteousness, and the comfort of knowing you're on the side of the angels. Both create environments where asking questions feels dangerous, where admitting uncertainty feels like weakness, where changing your mind feels like betrayal. Pew Research has tracked this widening divide since the 1990s. The ideological gap between Democrats and Republicans has more than doubled, from 15 percentage points in 1994 to 36 points today. Both sides now view the opposing tribe not just as wrong, but as a threat to the nation itself. The middle ground doesn't merely shrink, it becomes conceptually impossible. The search for hidden truth. As people lose the ability to evaluate claims, they become more drawn to sources that promise secret knowledge. The less capable you are of critical thinking, the more appealing conspiracy theories become. Conspiracy thinking fills the vacuum left by reasoned analysis. It offers simple explanations for complex events, clear villains for ambiguous problems, and the comforting sense that someone, somewhere, is in control. These narratives satisfy emotional needs, not intellectual ones. The internet has become a breeding ground for this kind of thinking. The rhetoric is always the same: what they don't want you to know, the truth they're hiding, the real story behind the headlines. This language does something clever. It flatters the reader, positioning them as part of an enlightened minority who can see through the lies everyone else believes. It turns gullibility into discernment, credulity into courage. You're not being fooled. You're one of the few people awake. Many of these platforms are simply grifts. They exist to sell books, supplements, survival gear, anything that monetizes the paranoia they're cultivating. Others serve as vehicles for political manipulation. But the mechanism is the same: bypass critical analysis entirely by offering emotional satisfaction instead. The tragedy isn't just that people believe false things. It's that they've lost the ability to question what they believe. Critical thinking hasn't been replaced by ignorance. It's been replaced by a counterfeit that feels like insight, but functions like indoctrination, where trauma lives. There's a deeper pattern beneath all of this: the relationship between trauma and the death of critical thinking. Trauma, whether individual or collective, does something specific to our capacity for thought. It narrows our window of tolerance, makes ambiguity feel dangerous, turns uncertainty into a threat. When you've been hurt, deeply hurt, the world becomes a place where you need to know, with absolute certainty, who is safe and who is dangerous, where the good people are and where the threats lurk. There's no room for nuance in survival mode, no space for complexity, no capacity for holding multiple perspectives. And we are, collectively, a traumatized society. The pandemic, economic instability, political violence, climate anxiety, the constant bombardment of crisis. After crisis, after crisis. But the trauma runs deeper than recent events. There's what psychologist Maria Yellowhorse Braveheart called historical trauma, the cumulative emotional and psychological wounding across lifespans and generations, emanating from massive group trauma experiences. For indigenous peoples, it's the legacy of genocide, forced relocation, boarding schools designed to kill the Indian, save the man, children stolen from families, languages forbidden, cultures systematically destroyed. For Black Americans, it's the intergenerational inheritance of slavery, segregation, ongoing systemic racism, the Middle Passage, Jim Crow, redlining, mass incarceration, police violence, generations of knowing, in your bones, that the system was designed to harm you. For descendants of Holocaust survivors, it's the transmitted fear, the hypervigilance, the sense that catastrophe could come at any moment. For refugees and children of war, it's the displacement, the loss, the knowledge that home can be destroyed. Historical trauma isn't metaphorical. Research shows it's biological. Trauma impacts gene expression, alters stress responses, changes how the nervous system develops, and these changes can be passed down. When your grandmother experienced famine, your body may still carry the metabolic memory. When your grandfather survived genocide, your nervous system may still scan for threat. When your ancestors were enslaved, the hypervigilance doesn't just vanish, because legal conditions changed, and here's what matters for critical thinking. Traumatized nervous systems don't rest, they scan for threat. They categorize rapidly, safe or dangerous, friend or foe, us or them. They don't have the luxury of contemplation, of sitting with ambiguity, of considering multiple perspectives. Is it any wonder that people are reaching for certainty, that they're grasping at simple explanations, that they're retreating into tribal allegiances? This isn't an excuse, but it is context, understanding that the death of critical thinking is often a trauma response, a survival strategy, one that made sense at some point, even if it's now causing harm. Spiritual bypassing, when certainty becomes refuge, and this is where spiritual bypassing enters. Psychotherapist John Welwood coined this term in the 1980s, after observing a troubling pattern in Buddhist communities and in his own practice. He noticed highly devoted spiritual practitioners, people who had meditated for decades, who could discuss non-dual awareness with sophistication, yet remained emotionally wounded and relationally immature. Their spiritual practice had become compartmentalized, sealed off in a separate zone of their lives. They were using spirituality, not for growth, but for defense, as a way to avoid the very work that transformation requires. Spiritual bypassing is the tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. It's the attempt to rise above the raw and messy side of our humanness before we've fully faced and made peace with it. And it's not limited to meditation cushions. It's everywhere now, woven through our entire cultural fabric, masquerading under different names, but operating through the same mechanism. In spiritual communities, it looks like toxic positivity. Good vibes only, stay in your high vibration. You create your own reality. All phrases that sound empowering, but function to shut down genuine feeling, to bypass grief, anger, fear, pain. In wellness culture, it manifests as the obsession with optimization, biohacking, performance enhancement, the relentless pursuit of the best version of yourself, as if the version that exists right now, with all its wounds and contradictions, isn't worth being with. In political spaces, it appears as ideological purity. The belief that if we just get everyone to think correctly, all our problems will be solved. This bypasses the hard relational work, the emotional complexity, the uncomfortable reality that people are messy and contradictory. And in conspiracy communities, it shows up as the search for hidden knowledge, the fantasy that there's a secret truth that, once revealed, will make everything make sense. This bypasses the anxiety of living in a chaotic world where bad things happen for no reason, where there isn't always someone to blame. The conspiracy theorist who says, "Trust the plan," is doing the same thing as the wellness influencer who says, "Stay in your high vibration." Both are offering emotional comfort disguised as truth. The political partisan who reduces every issue to tribal loyalty is engaging in the same avoidance as someone who insists everything happens for a reason. What all these forms share, what makes them all spiritual bypassing, is the same underlying mechanism: the use of belief, any belief, to create distance from uncomfortable inner experience. It's choosing transcendence over integration, certainty over truth, comfort over growth, and in doing so, arresting the very development that could lead to actual wisdom. Because here's the truth: you cannot heal what you will not feel. You cannot integrate what you refuse to acknowledge, and you cannot think clearly when your entire system is devoted to avoiding pain. Real healing, the kind that actually restores capacity, requires moving toward the discomfort, not away from it. Slowly, patiently, developing the ability to be with what is, without immediately reaching for a belief system to make it manageable, without grasping at a narrative to explain it away. This is hard work, deeply hard, and it's work that our culture, with its obsession with positivity and productivity, actively discourages. We're told to heal fast, to bounce back, to stay positive, to manifest abundance, all of which are forms of spiritual bypassing, all of which prevent the actual work of healing, and all of which ensure that critical thinking remains out of reach, where critical thinking came from. The concept of critical thinking isn't new. It's embedded in the foundations of Western philosophy, developed over centuries by people who understood that clear thinking requires discipline. Socrates built his entire approach on one recognition: unexamined belief is the root of error. His method was relentless questioning designed to expose contradictions and force people toward clarity. Socratic inquiry assumed that truth emerges through dialogue, through the friction of having your ideas challenged. It required intellectual humility, the admission that you don't actually know what you think you know. Modern digital culture encourages the opposite. We don't ask questions. We collect affirmations. We don't engage in dialogue. We perform for our tribes. Plato and Aristotle systematized this further, developing formal logic and epistemology. Aristotle's emphasis on empirical observation and logical structure became the foundation for scientific thinking. These philosophers understood that reason requires discipline, that truth emerges from dialectic, the back-and-forth exchange of ideas, the confrontation of assumptions. But dialectic can't exist in echo chambers. Reason can't flourish in environments that punish intellectual humility and reward tribal certainty. Centuries later, Francis Bacon identified what he called the idols of the mind, systematic cognitive errors that distort human judgment. The idols of the tribe, our tendency to see patterns where none exist. The idols of the cave, personal biases shaped by individual experience. The idols of the marketplace, misunderstandings that arise from imprecise language and social pressures. The idols of the theater, dogmatic adherence to established systems and ideologies. Bacon recognized these as inherent human vulnerabilities that must be actively countered through rigorous method. Today, every one of these idols has been mechanized and amplified by digital technology. Social media algorithms exploit the idols of the tribe. By feeding us pattern-confirming content, they weaponize the idols of the cave by personalizing our feeds based on our biases. They supercharge the idols of the marketplace by creating linguistic bubbles where words mean different things to different tribes. And they reinforce the idols of the theater by making ideological loyalty more rewarding than independent thought. We haven't overcome Bacon's warnings. We've industrialized the very cognitive errors he identified, the vicious cycle. These forces don't operate independently. They form a self-reinforcing system. Unresolved trauma, both personal and historical, drives people towards certainty. Certainty drives them into echo chambers. Echo chambers intensify beliefs and create resistance to challenge. Resistance to challenge prevents both emotional and intellectual growth. The cycle tightens. Critical thinking requires capacities, all of which depend on emotional strength, tolerance for discomfort, openness to uncertainty, willingness to revise beliefs, capacity for self-reflection, ability to engage with opposing views. When emotional development stalls, intellectual development stalls with it. The death of critical thinking is inseparable from arrested emotional maturity, and spiritual bypassing reveals its deepest harm by offering shortcuts to peace, or certainty, or enlightenment. It prevents people from doing the difficult inner work that actually builds capacity. It's like trying to build muscle by imagining yourself lifting weights. The fantasy feels good, but the strength never develops. The capacity never emerges, and so people remain, despite all their spiritual concepts or political convictions, fundamentally fragile, unable to tolerate discomfort, unable to question themselves, unable to think. The education crisis. If critical thinking is to be revived, education needs transformation. Too much of modern schooling, especially standardized, test-driven education, teaches what to think rather than how to think. Knowledge is delivered as fixed content, Rather than invitation to inquiry, students learn to memorize and recite, not to analyze and question. The American philosopher John Dewey argued over a century ago that education should cultivate reflective thinking, the active, persistent consideration of beliefs and evidence. He believed democratic societies depend on citizens' ability to engage thoughtfully with problems, form independent judgments, and revise those judgments when confronted with new evidence. That vision has been largely abandoned. Children are often taught singular narratives. Their intellectual world is flattened into predetermined answers. The habits of reflection don't develop automatically. They must be deliberately cultivated. Without that cultivation, students reach adulthood ill-equipped for complexity. Dewey's principles remain relevant. Encourage inquiry over rote learning. Teach evaluation of sources, assumptions, and arguments. Foster open dialogue and respectful disagreement. Integrate philosophy, logic, and ethics into mainstream curricula. Treat education as growth, not indoctrination. But there's a deeper problem. You can't teach critical thinking without also teaching emotional regulation. Students need to learn how to sit with discomfort, how to tolerate ambiguity, how to examine their own reactions before accepting them as truth. Critical thinking is as much an emotional skill as an intellectual one. And this is precisely what spiritual bypassing prevents. When students are taught to avoid discomfort, to seek only positive states, to bypass difficulty in favor of easy answers, they never develop the emotional capacity that genuine thinking requires. The personal cost. What does it feel like, from the inside, when critical thinking dies? It doesn't announce itself. There's no moment when you wake up and realize you've stopped thinking. Instead, it's a gradual narrowing, a slow constriction of possibility. You find yourself increasingly certain about things, not because you've done the work to earn that certainty, but because certainty has become your refuge. Questions that once felt generative now feel threatening. Ideas that once sparked curiosity now trigger defensiveness. And you don't notice, because everyone around you is doing the same thing. The person who's lost critical thinking doesn't experience themselves as closed-minded. They experience themselves as enlightened, as one of the few people who truly understands, as awake when everyone else is asleep. This is the cruel paradox of intellectual decay. The less capable you become of genuine thought, the more confident you feel in your beliefs. The less you question, the more certain you become that you've found the truth. The narrower your perspective, the more clearly you think you see, and relationships begin to fracture. Not all at once, but slowly. Old friendships become strained. Family gatherings grow tense. You find yourself unable to talk to people you once felt close to. But you tell yourself, this is their problem. They're the ones who've changed. They're the ones who can't see clearly. The possibility that you might be the one in the bubble becomes literally unthinkable. Because to think it, you'd need the very capacity you've lost. This is the personal cost, not just the loss of intellectual flexibility, but the loss of connection, the loss of intimacy, the loss of the ability to truly meet another human being in their complexity. You become increasingly alone, surrounded by people who agree with you, but isolated from genuine human contact. Because genuine contact requires vulnerability. It requires not knowing. It requires being willing to be changed by the encounter. The paradox of intelligence Critical thinking doesn't fail only among the uneducated. Some of the most spectacular failures of critical thinking happen among the most educated. Intelligence is no protection against intellectual capture. In some ways, it makes capture easier. Because intelligent people are better at constructing elaborate justifications for what they already want to believe. They can build more sophisticated arguments. They can cite more sources. They can deploy more complex reasoning. But if the foundational commitment is to defend rather than discover, all that intelligence becomes a weapon against truth. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning, the tendency to use our cognitive abilities not to find truth, but to protect existing beliefs. And the smarter you are, the better you are at it. The more convincing your rationalizations become, even to yourself. This is why you can find brilliant people, PhDs, published academics, caught in the same tribal dynamics as everyone else, repeating talking points, dismissing contrary evidence, engaging in the same spiritual bypassing as someone with no formal education at all. The difference isn't in the quality of thought. The difference is in the sophistication of the defense mechanisms, in how elaborately they can justify their certainty. This should be humbling, the recognition that none of us, no matter how educated, is immune to these failures. That critical thinking is not a permanent achievement. It's a practice, a discipline, something that must be renewed every day with every belief we hold. And it requires something that intelligence alone cannot provide. It requires humility, the willingness to be wrong, the courage to not know, the strength to sit with uncertainty, even when certainty is available. Practices for renewal, if you want to reclaim or develop the capacity for critical thinking. There are practices that can help, not quick fixes, not spiritual bypasses, but genuine practices that slowly rebuild capacity. First, notice your certainties. Pay attention to the beliefs you hold, that you never question. The positions you defend, reflexively. The ideas that, when challenged, trigger immediate defensiveness. These are your edge, your growing edge, the place where inquiry is most needed and most difficult. Second, practice discomfort. Deliberately expose yourself to ideas that challenge your worldview, not to adopt them, not to agree with them, but to practice the skill of holding them without immediately rejecting them. Notice what happens in your body. Notice the impulse to dismiss, to argue, to defend. And instead of following that impulse, just breathe. Stay with the discomfort. Let it be there. Third, cultivate intellectual humility. Ask yourself regularly, what if I'm wrong? Not as a rhetorical question, but as genuine inquiry. What if the people who disagree with me aren't stupid or evil, but are seeing something I'm not? What if my certainty is a defense mechanism? What if I've been captured by the very forces I believe I'm immune to? Fourth, seek out people who think differently, not to convert them or be converted, but to practice the skill of genuine encounter, the ability to be curious about another person's reality, without needing them to be wrong, to hold your own position while genuinely trying to understand theirs. This is the opposite of the current moment, and it's essential. Fifth, read widely, but not to find ammunition. Read to understand. Notice where they have a point. Notice where they've thought carefully about something you haven't. Allow yourself to be changed, slightly, by what you learn. And finally, be patient with the discomfort. The process of reclaiming critical thinking is not pleasant. It means living with uncertainty. It means tolerating the anxiety of not knowing. It means watching your certainties crumble. Sometimes repeatedly. The urge to reach for a new belief system, a new ideology to replace the old one, will be strong. Resist it. Stay in the questioning. This is where growth happens, the question of hope. So where does this leave us? Is there hope? The honest answer is, I don't know. And that uncertainty, that not knowing, is itself an exercise in critical thinking. The ability to hold the question without demanding a comforting answer. What I can say is this: change is possible. Not easy, not guaranteed, but possible. People do wake up from ideological capture. They do develop the capacity for critical thought, even later in life. They do learn to tolerate discomfort, to question their certainties, to open their minds. But it rarely happens through argument, rarely through debate, rarely through someone telling them they're wrong. It happens through encounter. It happens through encounter, through meeting someone who holds their beliefs differently than you hold yours, not with rigid certainty, but with curious conviction, not with defensive armor, but with vulnerable strength. Through witnessing someone change their mind about something important and seeing that it didn't destroy them, that it made them more themselves, more alive. Through experiencing being truly listened to, not waited out, not tolerated, but genuinely heard, by someone who doesn't need you to be wrong, for them to be right. These moments are rare, but they're powerful. They create small openings, and sometimes a small opening is enough. The return to presence. There's something else worth saying, something that might sound contradictory, given everything we've discussed. Critical thinking, as important as it is, isn't the ultimate goal. It's a capacity, a crucial capacity, but it serves something deeper. What we're really after is presence, the ability to meet reality as it actually is. Not as we wish it to be, not as we fear it might be, but as it is. Critical thinking is one doorway into that meeting. It helps us clear away the layers of projection and distortion that prevent direct contact with what's true. But the goal isn't to think better. The goal is to be more awake, more responsive, more real. And this is where the journey circles back, because presence requires exactly what spiritual bypassing avoids: the willingness to be with what is. All of it, the beauty and the horror, the clarity and the confusion, the certainty and the doubt. You cannot be present while running from discomfort. You cannot be awake while hiding in ideology. You cannot meet reality while clinging to certainty. So the practices we've discussed aren't just about thinking better. They're about being more fully human, more fully here, more fully alive. The gift of uncertainty. In the end, uncertainty might be a gift. Not the anxiety of uncertainty, not the fear, but the spaciousness that comes from not knowing. When you don't know, you have to pay attention. You have to listen. You have to remain curious open, responsive to what emerges. Certainty, for all its comfort, is a kind of death. It closes investigation, ends exploration, stops growth. Uncertainty, uncomfortable as it is, keeps you alive, keeps you learning, keeps you in relationship with reality, with other people, with yourself. This doesn't mean abandoning all conviction or falling into relativism. Some things are true, some things are false, some actions are harmful, some paths lead to flourishing. But even our deepest convictions can be held with an open hand. We can stand firm while remaining curious. We can be committed while staying humble. We can have clarity without rigidity. This is the paradox. The more comfortable you become with not knowing, the more clearly you can see, the more willing you are to be wrong, the more often you'll be right. The less you need certainty, the more truth becomes available. Closing, the death of critical thinking is not inevitable. It's a choice we're making, collectively, every day. A choice to prioritize comfort over growth, certainty over truth, belonging over authenticity. We can make different choices, not easily, not without cost, but we can. It starts with noticing. Noticing when we're reaching for certainty to avoid discomfort. Noticing when we're defending positions rather than exploring truth. Noticing when we're performing for our tribes rather than thinking for ourselves. And then making a different choice. Staying with the question, tolerating the discomfort, remaining open. This is the work. Not glamorous, not comfortable, not quick, but it's the only work that actually changes anything. The only practice that builds real capacity. The only path toward genuine wisdom. The world needs, more than ever, people who can think clearly, who can hold complexity, who can question their certainties, who can meet reality with both strength and humility. Maybe you're one of those people, or maybe you're becoming one. Either way, the journey continues. One question at a time, one moment of staying present with what you don't know. Rest now. Let these ideas settle. Let them work in the depths. And tomorrow, when you wake, notice. Just notice what you're certain about and ask gently, what if I'm wrong? That question might be the beginning of everything. Good night. Chat.